I watched online episodes of She-Hulk. It sucks. Let's talk about it. So yeah, just a couple things before we get into it. I have not I've read some of the She-Hulk comics. I've read some comics with her in it. I feel like I have a decent understanding of her character in the comics, but I'm certainly by no means like an expert or anything. Another thing, a lot of people are probably gonna get mad at me for this, but I have not yet watched the Netflix Daredevil show. I know a lot of people say it's really good. I'm going to watch it. I promise. I have like so many like shows I need to get caught up on. But I will watch it definitely before the new one comes out. Because I know a lot of people say it's really good. But yeah, just putting that out there that I don't really have like a frame of reference. As far as like comparing, his appearance in this show versus what people are kind of used to. I mean, that's not really a spoiler, like the teasers literally show that he was going to be in the show anyway. But yeah, overall, I feel like, there more or less is a pretty much general consensus that the show is not very good. For me personally, I am pretty easily ready to declare it the worst Disney Plus series. Honestly, not even just the worst Disney Plus series, probably the worst MCU product that's been put out so far. I mean, the Loki series definitely made me angrier just because I loved the character so much and I just absolutely hated what they did to Loki. But, objectively in terms of, like, writing, VFX, just overall quality, yes, this show is much worse. But yeah, so I know that, like, there was a lot of backlash, honestly, like, even before, like, any of, like, the trailers or anything came out, I know that there was, backlash that I feel like was not justified, like, even before, like, any of the trailers or anything, like, some people, were, not thrilled with just the idea of even having a She-Hulk show because, she's a female character, which, yes, I do think that, like, backlash like that is stupid, because, like, people are saying, like, oh, they're just making this show because, like, she's a woman character, as if, like, this isn't a character that has already existed for, like, decades, and, like, already has, like, a huge fan base. So yeah, I know, like, there are people who, like, were against this show purely just because, they're sexist, and I do think that backlash like that is stupid, like, even before I ever got into Marvel, like, as a kid, like, I knew She-Hulk was a thing, so, like, yeah, I do think that, like, that level of backlash against the show is dumb, but, even, like, after, like, all the trailers and people started watching the episodes, like, I feel like the creators of this show were kind of trying to imply that, like, anybody who doesn't like this show just doesn't like it purely because they're sexist, which, yeah, I think that's stupid, like, same deal with Captain Marvel, like, yes, are there people who don't like it purely because, they're sexist and blah blah, and they just don't like female superheroes or whatever, like, yes, and those people are stupid, but that doesn't give you, like, an excuse to just write off any and all criticism as sexism, because there are still a lot of genuine problems in this show. A lot of serious problems. Yeah, so, I guess really, let me start off with what I did like about the show. I mean, honestly, there's really only one thing, to be completely honest with you. The acting, for the most part, I thought was pretty okay. I like Tatiana Maslany as She-Hulk. I think that she brings a lot of charisma and energy to the character. I wish she was given a better script. But I did like her a lot. I liked watching her. Just, I wish that, like, again, I wish she was given a better script, or even just able to, like, maybe, like, improv or do something a little more, because, yeah, I think definitely the biggest issue that I have with this show would definitely be the writing. It's just a mess. I heard something about, like, I guess, like, the creators of the show were saying something like, oh, well, we didn't really know how to, like, make a lawyer show, so we weren't sure if we wanted to, like, make a lawyer show, so I don't know if this is supposed to be, like, more of a superhero show, or, I mean, it definitely doesn't seem like a superhero show, because there's not really a whole lot of superheroing things that go on in the show. It's mostly just Jen being a lawyer as She-Hulk, which, I mean, if you want to do that, you certainly can, but, it's very obvious that the writers didn't know how to do that, and, like, okay, but if you don't know how to do that, then, like, learn how to make a goddamn lawyer show. Like, do your research. Like, don't just, I don't know, just, like, go. If you admittedly don't know how to make a lawyer show, then you have to do your research and learn how to make a lawyer show. Like, this is not that hard. And it really just felt like they just did not know what to do with the show, because it's really just a bunch of, like, all these, like, different plot lines that don't really go anywhere. They just kind of end, and certainly in the last episode, which we'll get to that. But yeah, so, and I know another thing, I guess we can just, talk about this now. I know that, like, everybody has made fun of how bad the CG looks, how bad the design of She-Hulk is. I know, like, especially, like, when the trailers come out, I know that some people were trying to say, like, oh, well, they improved it a little bit since the trailer. It's like, okay, yeah, it does look a little better, but it's still not good. And another thing I've heard some people say is, like, oh, well, it looks fine, given the, the time crunch that the VFX artist had, and, given the constraints that to work with. And it's like, yeah, but, like, those conditions are exactly the problem. Like, the VFX artist should not have to be, trying to meet all of these, like, impossible deadlines just to try to make a product. I really don't think it's, too much to ask that VFX artists be able to work comfortably without, like, wanting to die. Like, I know that a lot of, like, of the CG artists have come out and talked about just how, like, absolutely awful it is to work for Marvel right now. I mean, like, they're trying to meet all of these, like, impossible deadlines and working these insane hours for, like, garbage pay. So it's like, yeah, of course the end product is gonna look bad. Like, what were you expecting? And I feel like there definitely is no greater evidence of just how quantity over quality Marvel has become than the CG. Like, you compare it to, like, what they had, like, 10 years ago. Like, back then, like, they were, like, pumping out, like, 2 movies a year, at 3 at most. And it felt like, there was actual, like, genuine time and care and love put into each one. And now, like, you were getting, like, 4 movies a year on top of, like, all the Disney Plus series they're doing. So it's like, and it doesn't feel like each project doesn't feel like an individualized effort of, like, it doesn't feel like its own product where, like, the people who worked on it were able to just kind of pour all of their, love and all of their effort into it. It all just feels like the MCU just kind of feels like a just conveyor belt of stuff now. Like, they're just pumping out one thing after another, and maybe some of it's okay, maybe it isn't, and, if it's not good, who cares, because we got something new coming out next month anyway. It feels like they're just trying to, like, pump out as much shit at you as they possibly can, and it doesn't, like, the quality is just gone so down, and it just doesn't feel worth it anymore. Like, there's no, like, it just feels like a bunch of, like, corporate shit now, and definitely I feel like this show is certainly a prime example of that. So I guess we can just go episode by episode, I guess. So starting off with the first episode, right away, they already pretty much botched up her origin story. So, because, like, in the comics, my understanding is that she was taking on this case and going after this kind of, like, dangerous criminal person, which she knew was risky, and it could, potentially get her killed, and she does end up getting shot. And then the only way that, her life can be saved is if Bruce gives her a blood transfusion, which, obviously, it's a complicated decision there, because on the one hand, obviously, Bruce wants to save his cousin's life, but on the other hand, transfusing his blood into hers could, it's going to turn her into the She-Hulk, which could potentially ruin her life. So it's a difficult decision that he makes, and it's a difficult decision that she has to make on top of that. Am I going to, save my own life or risk my life to go after this person? And, even though she knows that she's risking her own life, it's the right thing to do, and it's her job, and it's something that she wants to do. So they're both making very hard decisions, and here, like, they completely change it. Like, she's in a car with Bruce, and they get into, like, an accident, and then, like, a drop of his blood gets into her wound, and that somehow, turns into this in She-Hulk, and it just doesn't, like, there's no, like, autonomy there anymore. Like, neither of them are, like, making a hard decision. It's just kind of, like, something that happens, and I feel like that kind of, it takes away from, you know, who both of they are as characters, and it's just not as interesting, I feel like. But yeah, so then, you know, she turns into She-Hulk, and like the whole crux of the first episode is basically just Bruce trying to teach her how to be a Hulk, even though, you know, it kind of seems like she doesn't really need training, because, like, you know, from what they show in the episode, like, she already pretty much has everything handled anyway. Like, she doesn't have an alternate personality like Bruce did. She pretty much masters her powers pretty quickly. And of course, you know, there's the whole thing that some people got, like, mad at, where there's a bit where, you know, like, Bruce is talking about, like, having to, like, control your anger and stuff, and she says, like, well, you know, what I go through as a woman, like, I already, like, control my anger way more than you do, and, you know, like, I'm not against the idea of, you know, talking about, like, the experience of being a woman at a Hulk would be different from being a man, but, like, you know, you can have this conversation without being a dick about it, right? Like, she's just straight up like, you know, I go through way more shit than you do, and it's like, and then again, like, this is still talking about Bruce, somebody who, you know, they establish has been through, like, a lot of trauma, and in his whole life, you know, like, had, like, a shitty childhood, like, we dealt with, you know, a lot of, trauma just, like, being the Hulk. You know, he literally, like, said that he attempted suicide in the Avengers. And then on top of that, he had to watch, you know, like, Natasha and Tony and all of his friends die. Like, she even says that at one point, like, she's like, you know, you've been sitting here dealing with, like, a bunch of trauma. So it's, like, not like she doesn't know about this. So it's, like, you know, why are you turning into this as, like, a competition of, like, I have to control my anger way more than you do? It's, like, how do you know that? Like, it's just so dumb. Like, it just doesn't, like, that's another thing, too, like, the whole, like, I guess, like, quote-unquote feminist angle they're trying to take with this show. Again, like, I'm not opposed to the idea of having, you know, feminist talking points in the show, but, like, the way that they go about it is just all wrong, and this is kind of becoming, like, a trend, definitely, in a lot of, newest Marvel stuff. You know, I talked about it a little bit with the Loki series, too, where, like, it feels like they're just kind of, like, saying that, like, you know, just being a female character will, like, automatically make you, like, better than your male counterpart. Which is just not the message that we should be taking away from this at all. And on top of that, like, it just feels so performative and fake, and what I mean by that, like, it just doesn't feel genuine. Like, it doesn't seem like they're actually trying to, like, you know, make a difference or, you know, change people's minds or their hearts. Like, it just feels like performative corporate bullshit. Like, especially just with, like, how half-assed a lot of it seems. Like, for example, like, you know, they're saying, like, oh, you know, like, we'll make a feminist show, and we'll say, like, this is all about, like, women empowerment, but at the same time, like, we won't make, She-Hulk actually muscular. Like, she needs to look like a goddamn Barbie doll with green skin. And on top of that, like, the only reason she even wants to turn into the She-Hulk, as we find out later, is because it gets her, like, Tinder dates or some shit. And, like, they're constantly making jokes about, like, her boobs and her ass. Like, there's a bit in one of the episodes where, like, she's, like, giving one of her high school friends a hug, and her friend basically just, like, face plants right into her boobs, and it's like, I'm sorry, were these not the exact types of jokes that people got annoyed with, like, Joss Whedon for making? Like, how is this like, the whole thing with, like, in the Age of Ultron where, like, Bruce, like, falls into Natasha's boobs? It's like, how is this any different? And, like, yeah, like, it doesn't, again, like, it just feels very fake and very, you know, corporate performance that really just doesn't mean anything. And I also, like, I guess I heard that, like, one of the VFX artists on Twitter actually said that, like, the original designs of She-Hulk actually did have her looking more muscular, but then the higher-ups were literally like, no, like, she needs to be slimmer. Like, how are you gonna, like, claim that this show is, like, advocating for women empowerment when you're doing shit like that? Like, whatever this show thinks it's doing for, like, feminism and women empowerment, like, it's doing the exact opposite of that, honestly. And yeah, so, like, you know, her origin was just very weak, and then, like, there's this, you know, whole bit where she's, like, breaking the fourth wall, which, honestly, like, I really wasn't sure how to feel about it, Like, I know that she doesn't in the comics, but like here, like it just feels very out of place for the MCU. Cause it's like obviously like nobody else in the MCU does it. No, aside from, I mean, Deadpool is kind of like his own thing. Like he, you know, he's just kind of like, he's not really part of like, if it, at least like from my understanding, like he doesn't really seem like he's part of like a set storyline. Like he just kind of like doesn't care and just does his own thing and kind of just, you know, makes fun of the X-Men and everybody and blah blah blah. But like here, like it just, I feel like it just raises more questions than it answers. So it's like, so is she aware that everything is not real and it's just like the like nothing matters essentially because like everyone is a character and it's all fake? Or like, and when she's talking to the camera, it's like, who is she supposed to be canonically talking to? Like, is she aware that like there's an audience that is watching this and none of this is real? Like it just, it feels very odd, and I didn't really get it. Like it, I could have done without it, honestly, and I think certainly the show could have done without it, especially in the finale, which, you know, again, we'll get to that. But yeah, so then we, you know, get into, in the later episodes, we get into, you know, her job and her workplace, and, you know, she ends up, like, losing her job because she's the She-Hulk now, and she ends up, like, saving the jury, and, you know, her boss is worried that it makes them, like, biased, so she can't work in her old place anymore. So now she's the head of this new, like, superhuman law division, which is certainly a cool idea, but I feel like they just don't really do anything that interesting with it. Like we just see a bunch of like really odd like side characters, like was it like the Mr. Immortal, that's it. And then like some other like people, like I don't even remember, honestly. They just a bunch of like weird like side characters, and like they're just kind of there for comic relief, and like that's it. Like it like there's a bunch of, like I said, like there's a bunch of different plot lines around like not Tatiana, Titania, and the Abomination comes back for a little bit, so he has a bit of an arc for a couple episodes, but it's all just a bunch of like mixed stuff that doesn't really go anywhere, and they don't really connect in any way. But yeah, so it's the first like major arc, which takes place over like 3 episodes or so, is you know, the Abomination. She-Hulk has to basically advocate for his parole, and show that, you know, he's a good guy now, and Emil Blonsky, and I'm blanking on the name of the actor who plays him, but, you know, he was a lot of fun, and it was definitely, it's an interesting idea to see those two interact, but again, like, it doesn't really go anywhere. Like, he just kind of like disappears, and then he comes back later in the series where it turns out now he's got like his own like mystical retreat type place or something where he runs these like pseudo therapy sessions. And again, it's mostly just for comic relief. Like, it doesn't really like amount to anything. And yeah, so then like we just see her like kind of like just in the workplace, and again, like this for me is a telltale sign of just like lazy writing, especially for female characters, where like pretty much like every single male character in a workplace is like a total dickhead except for this like one guy that she's friends with. Again, like that to me is just a telltale sign of laziness, because when you're writing a female character, because the only thing that makes her stand out is that she's better than all of the male characters, but she doesn't really have like her own like personality or interests. It's like, because when you think about like what do we really know about She-Hulk? Like, what does she like to do? Like, what is important to her? Like, why did she become a lawyer in the first place? Why was that something that she wanted to do? Like, we don't know that. We don't know why she wants to be a lawyer, or why, you know, her job is important to her. Like, we didn't even see that much of her relationship with Bruce. Like, he's there for like an episode where, you know, he's like teaching how to be She-Hulk, and then he just kind of like pieces out. By the second episode, like just going back to Sakaar or whatever. I don't know if they're like, I guess they might be making a spin-off movie for that. I don't know. But like, yeah, like, we don't even see that much of like, you know, that aspect of it. That would have been like cool just to see like those two like interact. And like another thing too is like in the comics, so like in the comics, like She-Hulk is really like a source of support for Bruce. You know, just someone else who like understands, what he's going through and what it's like to be a Hulk. Like I remember, there's a panel, there's a bit where, Bruce is like, are you mad at me that, like, this happened to you? Like, this is pretty much, like, no, my fault that you're a Hulk now. And she's like, no, I'm grateful. Like, I like using my powers to be She-Hulk, And, they have this, again, like, it's just very, like, this friendship and this interesting relationship because, they are the only people at the time, I think, who, are Hulks and understand what each other is going through. And again, here, like, they just kind of, like, put into, like, this competition, like, in the first episode where she's just like, I go through way more stuff than you, and, we just don't really have that connection with, her and Bruce at all, and, yeah, like, it just doesn't, like, we just don't really see anything, like, that interesting about her, to be honest. Like, all we have is that, like, oh, she's a woman, she's more competent than all the men in her workplace, and on top of that, like, the main villains in this show are these, like, incel troll people who want to, like, cancel She-Hulk and her man-hating ways. Yeah, subtlety is not a word that exists in this show, and I feel like a lot of people were saying, oh, they're being so meta, because, like, a lot of people were, like, against She-Hulk because, like, she was a woman, and it's, like, as if, like, they somehow, like, predicted the backlash, and it's like, essentially, it's, like, creating it. It's like, well, yeah, like, of course, like, they knew that, like, there was gonna be backlash to the show, and then, like, now they're trying to say that, like, it's all because of sexism, and it's, like, again, like, it just feels very, like, fake and performative, and just, it's not good. But yeah, so, I'm, like, blanking on what to say even, because, like, I just don't know. But yeah, so, yeah, so we have the stuff with, Emil Blonsky, and then, Wong is there for a little bit, like, there's, like, some stuff with, again, like, there's a bit with, like, Wong where he's trying to, like, go after this guy who's using his magic recklessly, and then that doesn't really go anywhere, and then, like, there's something about, like, Titania wants to, like, sue She-Hulk because she wants to use the name now, even though, like, She-Hulk didn't like the name, but now I guess she does. It's like, that's another thing, like, we don't even, like, Jen doesn't ever get to a point where it feels like she actually, like, likes being She-Hulk, or, like, ever, like, feels comfortable with it. Like, at most, it seems like it's something that she tolerates, like, at best, it's something that she tolerates, like, she doesn't even like the name She-Hulk, she's like, I don't wanna, like, do this, I don't wanna, again, because, like, in the comics, she's like, no, I like being She-Hulk, I like doing this, whereas here, she's like, no, I hate this, I don't want to be a superhero, I don't like the name She-Hulk, I don't want anything to do with this, and it's like, okay, well, like, if you're gonna go that route, that's a good place to start off, but, like, there has to be, an arc, there has to be, like, some part where she's like, okay, actually, I feel like I can do this, and I feel like this is something that, I actually do enjoy, turning into She-Hulk, and again, like, here, like, it seems like the only time that she ever, like, voluntarily wants to be She-Hulk is because, again, it gets her dates on Tinder, which is really stupid, and, I know, like, there's a bit in episode 8 where, like, Matt Murdock is like, well, you can use these powers for good and stuff, but, like, again, like, that's Matt speaking, that's not coming from her, so it never really gets to a point where she even, like, seems like she even wants to be She-Hulk, which is just really odd to me. But, yeah, so then, like, there's this whole bit where, like, she's, like, trying to, like, go out on dates and stuff, and then, like, she, like, uses the fact that she went on dates as She-Hulk to show that actually the name does belong to her. And, it's just kind of like, this, again, doesn't really go anywhere, like, Titania is just kind of annoying, and then she just kind of leaves, and then, like, she comes back later, there's, like, this dumb episode where, like, she goes to, like, her friend's wedding or something, and her friend doesn't like that she's, like, taking all the attention away from her because everybody, like, thinks she's, like, hot as She-Hulk now. I think that, like, they showed later that, like, her friend was actually getting married to her dog or some shit. I don't even know. It's just really odd. And, like, I remember there's a bit where, like, her friend asked, like, how she's doing, and then, like, Jen is saying about how, like, her job is going real well and stuff, and her friend's like, oh, no, I don't care about that. I just want to know if you're dating a man. I'm like, who would say that? Like, who talks like this? Like, again, like, the commentary that they think they're making is just so dumb. So it's like, no one actually, like, yes, like, of course there are, like, you know, obnoxious people who, you know, like, just want to know if you're, like, in a relationship and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But, like, they would at least, like, pretend to care if you were doing well in your job. Like, nobody would just straight up say, like, I don't care that, like, your job is going well. Like, no one talks like that. Yeah, like, again, like, this whole thing and, like, that whole thing was just so dumb. And, you know, of course, like, later she meets, like, this guy at, the wedding that she really likes him, but oh no, then it turns out that he's actually, you know, evil, and he's actually part of the intelligentsia, like, you know, who didn't see this coming? Like, the twist villains, I feel like, are getting very old. But yeah, so then, like, the intelligentsia people will become, like, a thing, and, oh yeah, what is it? What was in episode 3? It was episode 3 where Megan Thee Stallion was, oh yeah, I guess we can briefly talk about that. Like, yeah, like, there's this really bizarre, like, subplot in episode 3 where, like, one of Jen's coworkers is, like, he's suing this, like, Asgardian light elf because she shapeshifted into Megan Thee Stallion, and he thought he was dating Megan Thee Stallion, so he, like, bought a bunch of shit for her, and now he, like, wants to get his money back, but, like, the jury doesn't think that he'd actually be, like, that stupid to think that he was really dating Megan Thee Stallion, and then Jen has to come in and be like, yeah, no, actually, he is that stupid, and I'm just like, were you just looking for an excuse to put Megan Thee Stallion in this show? Like, what is happening right now? And of course, there's the whole twerking post-credit scene, which is just stupid. But yeah, so then, like, after she gets, like, ghosted from this guy from Intelligentsia, she, like, ends up going to Blonsky's spiritual retreat where they have a bunch of, like, these, like, really odd, like, side characters from the comics. And there's, like, therapy session, and, like, there's a bit where, like, they have this whole, like, emotional, like, scene where she's talking about how, like, everybody likes She-Hulk and, like, they don't really see Jen, and it's, like, the whole, like, concept is so stupid because she's talking to all these people in these, like, ridiculous costumes and outfits and stuff, and it's, like, it's one of those things where, like, it's so ridiculously stupid that, like, it could have maybe worked if they at least had some, like, self-awareness of how stupid it was, but they don't. So they try to, like, make it an actually, like, emotional thing, so it ends up becoming cringe. Like, they're playing this big, like, dramatic music where she's going on this big speech, and it's like, I'm sorry, you're talking to, like, a room with, like, a porcupine guy and, like, a half-pig man and, like, guy wearing this, like, ridiculous, like, costume or something. It's like, how am I supposed to take this seriously? Like, you can't. Like, it would have been, you know, maybe it would have been funny if they played it up as a joke where, like, she said, like, no, like, I don't want to, like, do your therapy thing, I don't want to talk to you, and then they immediately cut to her, like, crying and saying, like, you know, nobody appreciates me, I wish more people liked me for just Jen. It's like, that might have been funny, because, like, they at least, like, played it up as a joke, like, they played into, like, the ridiculousness of the situation, but, like, they don't. Like, they try to, like, actually have, like, an emotional moment, and it's just so ridiculous that you just, like, end up, like, laughing at how cringe it is. Like, you're laughing for all of the wrong reasons. The exact same problem that I had with, the Loki series and the whole, like, Loki and Sylvie relationship of, like, literally making Loki fall in love with himself. It's like, you know, maybe, like, this might have been funny if you played it up as a joke, but, like, the fact that you're actually trying to have us take the idea of Loki falling in love with another Loki, like, the fact that you're actually trying to have us take that seriously, like, it just ends up becoming cringe. And, yes, and of course, like, as we said, like, we find out that, like, the Josh guy is actually, like, evil and he's part of the, like, intelligentsia people or whatever. Then we get into the episode with Daredevil, which was easily the best episode in my opinion, and I guess by best I mean the, most tolerable. Charlie Cox, of course, is great as Daredevil. It was just really cool to see him as a really cool character. And again, like, it's the one time that we actually, like, see even, like, a sliver of what this show should have been. She-Hulk actually, like, going out and, like, using her powers to help people. Of course, like, she, like, I guess, like, there's, like, a character who's, like, I guess, dollar store Edna Mode who, like, designs her costumes, and, like, this, like, frog superhero guy kidnaps him, so she goes out and rescues him, because at first, like, the frog guy was, like, her client, but then, like, she finds out actually he's, like, evil, he's, like, this rich douchebag, so then she has to go and help Daredevil, save the costume designer guy. And that was actually, it was cool they had some, like, pretty cool fight scenes. It was cool to see them together. I think they're cute as a couple. I wouldn't mind seeing, more of them together. I think that there was, like, rumors that, like, She-Hulk is gonna show up in the new Daredevil show, which I certainly wouldn't mind. I mean, I definitely hope they, fix the CG. But, I wouldn't mind seeing more of them together. So that was easily the best episode for me, but then of course we get to the finale, which so basically, like, Intelligentsia, like, basically hijacks this gala she's at where she's, like, winning this award, and like it turns out they actually, like, filmed her, like, hooking up with Josh, and they, like, show it to everybody and stuff, and, like, she gets angry, and she, like, smashes the TV, and then everyone's, like, afraid of her, so now, like, she can't be She-Hulk anymore. And then she wants to basically find Intelligentsia and find the people who did this, and then it turns out it's this, like, douchey guy that she went on a date with earlier. And then, like, I guess, like, they, like, had this plan to, like, collect her blood to turn into a Hulk themselves, even though technically that's not really supposed to work, because the reason that Jen and Bruce can be the Hulk but no one else can is because they have a similar genetic makeup. But then it does end up working. The guy turns into a Hulk. And then the whole thing basically just comes to a stop where She-Hulk basically breaks the fourth wall and says, like, none of this is making sense. Like, Blonsky, we find out, has been turning back to the Abomination. Then he, like, gives a speech at the event for the Intelligentsia people, although I think I don't think he, like, understood what the Intelligentsia people were. I think that, like, he, as far as he knew, like, they were just a group that wanted a motivational speaker, so he just went to, speak as Abomination, so I guess he's just been, like, turning back into the Abomination for funsies or whatever. So yeah, that whole arc of getting him out of jail was pretty much, pointless, because then he just ends up going back to jail anyways. But yeah, like, there's that whole thing, and then, like, Titania shows up at the last minute for some reason, and also Bruce shows up, and, like, the whole thing is just kind of a mess, and then, like, she was just like, oh, this writing sucks, actually, this isn't working, and they just the whole thing where, like, she breaks the fourth wall and, like, goes to, like, the crew that's, like, writing the show, and they just make all these jokes about how, like, the writing this show, like, makes no sense, and it's all these just plot lines that, like, are just a mess and don't really go anywhere, and it's like, okay, but making, like, meta jokes about, like, how much the writing in your show sucks doesn't make it good. Like, if anything, it just makes it worse, because you're openly admitting that, like, it's bad, better, but you're still doing anyways. Like, it's the exact same problem that I had with shows like Teen Titans Go, where, like, instead of, like, actually listening to the criticism of the show, they just turn it into, like, a joke. Like, they're basically just straight up saying, like, oh yeah, we know it's bad, we don't care, fuck you, you'll still watch it, like, it's just this smug, like, self-awareness is just really annoying, especially because, like, they make jokes about, like, how, like, formulaic a lot of the MC movies are now, and stuff, like, all the characters have daddy issues, and, they make jokes about, like, the CG too, and stuff, and, like, they're just making all these, like, jokes really, like, aware of, like, the problems that people have with the MCU now, but, like, again, like, they're just straight up saying, pretty much saying, like, we don't care. And, like, it feels, it's just, like, it's the epitome to me of, like, just disrespecting the, like, insulting the audience's intelligence, of just, like, basically just straight up being like, yeah, we know this is bad, but we don't care because you're still gonna watch it. Like, just basically just, like, straight up saying that to our faces. I totally see why a lot of people, that got on a lot of people's nerves, definitely got on my nerves too. And then, like, so basically, like, the whole thing basically stops, so, you know, that whole plot line of, like, the whole thing of, like, in Intelligentsia collecting her blood and all that stuff, like, pretty much, like, what the entire show has been building up to. Nope, that's just out the window now. They pretty much just, like, then, like, they oh my god, like, how do I even describe it? It's like, they basically just, like, the whole thing just, like, stops, pretty much. Like, she's like, no, like, we're gonna do this how I want, and, we're just gonna, like, reset the whole thing, and then they go back, so, like, basically, like, none of the, you know, guys transform into the Hulk happens, like, everything just kind of gets resolved, like, I don't even remember, like, what happens to the guy who was trying to turn into the Hulk. I don't know if he, like, got arrested, or, like, or what happened, like, it just didn't make any sense. Like, I know that, like, again, like, the Abomination, like, gets arrested, so, again, like, that whole thing of, that whole arc we had of, you know, trying to show that he changed and he's a good guy now, yeah, that was all a waste of time. And then, like, they make Daredevil show up at last minute, pretty much just to, like, have this, like, cutesy scene of, like, her with her family. We get, turns out that Hulk has, like, a son now, Scar, from the comics, so, like, completely botched up his look from the comics. Like, he has, like, short hair on the comics, he has, like, this, like, long, like, dark hair, and again, like, the CG, just overall design is really bad. And, yeah, then it's just kind of, like, then later we see her as She-Hulk again, even though I thought, like, she legally wasn't allowed to turn into the She-Hulk, so I don't really know what happened there. Like, the whole show just kind of, like, ends. Like, it doesn't, like, there's no payoff, like, nothing really comes to any kind of, like, you know, a satisfying conclusion at all. Like, it just stops, and then, like, that's it. And, again, like, the fact that, like, they make all these jokes of how, like, aware they are of, like, you know, how bad the show is and stuff, like, it not only is it disrespectful to the audience, it's just disrespectful to people who work on the show, too. Like, I know that, like, again, like, a lot of, like, CG artists have, like, you know, are working these, like, ridiculous hours trying to, you know, make all these products, and then, like, oh, like, it doesn't matter, because the way we treat them, like, it's a joke. Everything's a joke. Like, our movies are formulaic, it's a joke. You know, the CG looks bad, it's a joke. It's fine, everything's a joke. Like, they don't, like, take anything seriously. And the whole show, like, it's a mess. The show is a mess. Like, I really, like, I don't know what else to say about it, to be honest. Like, it just, like, I feel bad for the people, you know, who have been, you know, fans of this character for a long time and have been waiting for every series in live action. Like, this is what they get. I feel like, you know, after, like, the decline of, you know, the MCU projects has just been, like, it's just been declining for so long, especially in, like, Phase 4, and, like, it feels kind of almost, like, inevitable this is, like, it would get to a place like this, because, like, they just don't care at this point. Like, you know, people are still gonna watch the shows, like, they're still making money, like, doesn't matter, like, the CG can look as awful as they want, because it doesn't matter, they're still gonna sell products, like, that's just, it's a product, like, that's all, like, that's all these shows are, these shows and movies are now, like, it's just, again, it's a corporate, it's not an actual, like, piece of art, it doesn't feel like, it's just a corporate installment that, they're just used to sell products, and again, like, they'll move on to the next thing, and that'll get them even more money, and, like, there's just no soul in it anymore. Like, I'm very forgiving of bad products if it at least feels like, there's actual, like, effort and, love for the work put into it. Like, the Power Rangers movie from 2017. So goddamn stupid, but, you could at least tell, like, they were having fun working on it. Like, you could tell this early, like, Elizabeth Banks looked like she was having, like, the time of her life. Like, you could tell they at least tried to put out a good product, but, like, here, like, they're just openly admitting, like, no, we don't care. We don't care if you don't like it. We don't care how bad it is. It doesn't matter. Like, it just doesn't feel, like, worth it anymore. And, yeah, like, again, like, just, like, the whole show is just another reason of, like, why you're pretty much just, like, falling out of love with the MCU at this point, if, like, it's getting to this point. And, yeah, like, that, I don't know what else to say about this show, to be honest. I know there are some people who like it, if this is your thing, great, but I feel like this just definitely did not work for a lot of people. I really don't know why show was rated so highly, and, like, a lot of, like, I've seen, like, a lot of, like, professional reviewers, like, I know it has a very high, like, Rotten Tomatoes score, and, like, I definitely don't want to be one of those people that's saying, like, oh, Disney's paying off the critics, but, like, it does kind of seem like that at this point, because it's, like, I don't, just, like, it feels so blatantly obvious it's just bad quality products at this point. Like, it just doesn't, I just don't understand why, critics would look at this and not say, like, oh yeah, like, the CG is really off, the writing doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know, man. Yeah, the only good thing I will say that came out of this show is, there's this band that I really called Yanaka, and they used one of their songs called Seize the Power during the end credits at the end of episode 3, and, like, they pretty much started to, like, blow up after that, so I'm at least glad that band is getting the recognition they deserve. So that's one good thing, I guess. Other than that, yeah, I mean, like, this is just bad. Like, it's not, like, it's not sending any kind of, like, a positive message for, like, women or whatever, no matter how much they're trying to, like, say that they are. Like, all of the commentary is so just, like, obnoxious and in your, it's so, like, beating you over the head to the point where, like, it's just obnoxious, and it just doesn't, like, it doesn't carry any weight anymore, like, and, yeah, so, I don't know what they're gonna do with, She-Hulk in the future. Like, I kind of, like, just end all these reviews, like, saying that, like, well, I hope that, like, at least the next thing will be better that they're in, but it really doesn't seem like it at this point that that's gonna happen anytime soon. But yeah, so, I don't know, I just kind of needed to vent and get that off my chest, because, this was painful. So yeah, so, I mean, I guess, trying to end on a positive note, the new Black Panther does actually look really good, so I definitely do want to go see that. Hopefully, at least there are still some products where, given good writers and good directors, you can still, have a good product, even with the, like, the ridiculous, like, constraints that the CGRs have, and, just how quickly these products are coming out now, and there's just not as much time to actually, like, sit down and write a good script and make a good movie, because they just have to pump out as much stuff as they can, as much as possible. But I do at least hope that, at least some installments in the future will be good, because this was definitely not. So yeah, that's pretty much my review. Definitely would not recommend. Feel like if you're a diehard She-Hulk fan, more than likely this will just be painful for you. So, I mean, I feel like if the people that do like this, that the show is for, have already seen it, so my recommendation doesn't really hold much weight at this point, I guess. But yeah, so it wasn't good. It was not good. Yeah, so that's my review, and I will see you guys next time.